Innocent but sentenced, her courage unraveled a town's shame. Chapter 1. The Weight of Chains. The air in Blackwater County's jail was thick with despair, a stale mix of rust and regret that clung to the walls. Clara Monroe, barely 22, sat on the edge of her cot, her hazel eyes tracing the cracks in the concrete floor. Her chestnut hair, once vibrant, hung limp, matted from 5 years behind bars. 5 years since the world turned against her. 5 years since she was branded a murderer. Clara hadn't killed anyone. She swore it on her mother's grave, on the Bible they made her hold in court, on every star she could no longer see from her cell. But Blackwater didn't care for truth when it had a scapegoat. Her neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Harper, had been found dead, stabbed 17 times in her kitchen. The knife, smeared with Clara's fingerprints, was enough for Judge Harlan Voss to slam his gavel and sentence her to death. Tomorrow, at dawn, they'd lead her to the gallows. A shiver ran through her, not from the cold, though the cell was freezing. It was the thought of the rope, the crowd, the way they'd cheer as her life ended for a crime she didn't commit. She clutched her knees, whispering a prayer she no longer believed in. Please, someone see me. The iron door clanged open, shattering the silence. Clara flinched, her heart racing. Sheriff Amos Kane stepped inside, his boots echoing like gunshots. At 38, he was broad-shouldered, with a jaw carved from stone and eyes that burned with something Clara couldn't name. His badge gleamed under the flickering bulb, a cruel reminder of his power. He'd been in Blackwater for years, ever since Clara was a teenager, and she'd always felt his gaze linger too long. Evening. Clara, he drawled, his voice low, almost intimate. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Last night on Earth. Any final requests? Clara's throat tightened. She scooted back on the cot, her back pressing against the wall. Just leave me alone, Sheriff. His smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Now that ain't no way to talk to the man keeping you safe. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the dim light. You know, I've always thought you were special. Ever since I rolled into this town, those eyes of yours, they tell a story. Clara's stomach churned. She'd heard rumors about Kane, whispers of his cruelty, his hatred for anyone who didn't look like him, his unchecked power. Blackwater was his kingdom, and he ruled with fear. She'd seen him smirk during her trial, seen him nod to the judge like they shared a secret. Now alone with him, she felt like prey. Get out, she whispered, her voice trembling but defiant. Kane's smile faded. He straightened, his hand resting on the baton at his hip. You don't get to make demands, girl, not anymore. He turned, but not before his eyes raked over her one last time. Sleep tight. Big day tomorrow. The door slammed shut, and Clara released a shaky breath. She curled into a ball, tears burning her eyes. She didn't know what Kane wanted, but she felt the weight of his intentions like a noose tightening around her neck. What does Sheriff Kane want with Clara, and why does he seem so untouchable? Chapter 2. The night that broke her. The moon hung low over Blackwater, a pale witness to the town's sins. Clara couldn't sleep. The cot creaked beneath her, and the distant howl of a dog echoed her fear. She thought of her life before her job at the diner, her dreams of leaving Blackwater, the way her neighbor Evelyn used to bake her cookies. She thought of the trial, the lies, the way her lawyer barely fought for her. She thought of tomorrow's dawn. The door creaked open again. Clara sat up, her heart pounding. Kane was back, but this time he wasn't alone. 2 deputies flanked him, their faces shadowed. Kane's eyes glinted with something darker than before: hunger, malice, certainty. Time for a little talk, he said, his voice a blade wrapped in silk. Clara scrambled back, but there was nowhere to go. The cell was a trap, and Kane was the hunter. She screamed, but the sound died in the concrete walls. The deputies stayed outside, their silence a betrayal. Kane moved closer, his presence suffocating. What happened next was a blur of pain and terror. Clara fought, clawing, kicking, begging. But Kane was stronger, his cruelty relentless. When it was over, he stood adjusting his belt, his face calm, as if he'd done nothing more than discipline a stray dog. Clara lay broken on the cot, her body trembling, her soul shattered. Her first experience, stolen in the cruelest way, left her hollow. "Speak of this," Kane whispered, leaning close, "and I'll make sure your last hours are worse than hell." He left, the door locking. Behind him, Clara didn't move. She couldn't. The world had taken everything, her freedom, her hope, her dignity. All she had left was pain. How will Clara survive this violation? And what will happen when her condition is discovered? Chapter 3. The dawn of Shane morning came too soon. The guards found Clara curled on the floor, her clothes torn, her face bruised. Whispers spread like wildfire through the jail. The execution was postponed, her condition was too obvious, her pain too public. The town buzzed with outrage, not for Clara but at the scandal. Who had done this? Why now? Judge Harlan Voss, a stern man with a reputation for fairness, was furious. He summoned the sheriff's department to court, demanding answers. Kane stood tall, his face a mask of innocence. "She's a liar," he said, his voice steady. "Probably hurt herself to delay the noose." But Clara's eyes told a different story. She sat in the courtroom, wrapped in a blanket, her gaze distant but burning with a quiet rage. She didn't speak, she couldn't yet, but her presence was enough to unsettle the judge. He ordered an investigation and suspended Kane pending its outcome. The town gasped. Kane, untouchable Kane, was no longer in charge. Deputy Sarah Ellis, a young officer with a sharp mind and a grudge against Kane's bigotry, was assigned to the case. She didn't trust her boss, never had. She'd seen him intimidate witnesses, tamper with evidence, and worse. Now she had a chance to uncover the truth. Sarah visited Clara in the hospital, where she was recovering physically, but not emotionally. "I believe you," Sarah said softly, her hand resting on Clara's. "Help me find who did this." Clara's voice was a whisper. "He'll kill me." "Not if I get him first," Sarah promised. Can Sarah uncover Kane's crimes before he silences Clara forever? Chapter 4. The threads of truth. Sarah dug deep, combing through Kane's past, his cases, his enemies. She found patterns, missing evidence, coerced confessions, witnesses who vanished. She interviewed Clara's old co-workers, her friends, anyone who might know something. A diner waitress, Mabel, hesitated before admitting she'd seen Kane watching Clara years ago, his obsession clear even then. Meanwhile, Kane wasn't idle. From his temporary suspension, he pulled strings, intimidating witnesses, planting doubts. He spread rumors that Clara was unstable, that she'd seduced a guard to escape justice. The town, already divided, grew uglier. Clara's supporters, mostly women and minorities, faced harassment, while Kane's allies rallied around him. But Sarah found a crack in Kane's armor. A retired deputy, Tom Carver, came forward, guilt eating at him. He'd seen Kane plant the knife in Evelyn's kitchen, seen him frame Clara. "I was scared," Tom confessed. "He threatened my family." Sarah's heart raced. This was it, the key to unraveling Kane's web. But before she could act, Tom was found dead, an apparent suicide. The evidence he'd promised was gone. Was Tom's death really a suicide? Or is Kane cleaning up his tracks? Chapter 5. The trap revealed. Sarah didn't stop. She cross-referenced Clara's case with Evelyn's murder, finding inconsistencies. The timeline didn't add up. Clara was at work when Evelyn died. The knife's prints were too perfect, too staged. Sarah realized Kane had planned this for years, orchestrating Clara's downfall to isolate her, to make her vulnerable, to break her. Then, a miracle, a hidden journal tucked in Evelyn's attic, mentioned by Clara's cousin. It detailed Kane's visits to Evelyn, his threats over a property dispute. The final entry read, "He's dangerous. If I die, it's him." Sarah presented the journal to Judge Voss. The court erupted. Kane was arrested, not just for Clara's assault, but for Evelyn's murder. Clara's death sentence was vacated. She collapsed in relief, her mother's arms around her. But Kane didn't break. In court, he sneered, claiming the journal was fabricated. His lawyer painted Clara as a vengeful liar. The town was torn, some still loyal to Kane, others demanding justice. Will Kane's influence save him, or will the truth finally prevail? Chapter 6. The redemption of Clara. Clara's healing was slow. Therapy helped, but nightmares lingered. She spoke at Kane's trial, her voice steady despite the hate-filled stares. "He took my life," she said, "but I'm taking it back." Her words echoed, a beacon for others silenced by fear. Sarah uncovered more Kane's history of abuse, his racist vendettas, his crimes buried by a corrupt system. The evidence was overwhelming. Kane was convicted of murder, rape, and obstruction of justice. He'd spend his life in prison, his badge a distant memory. Judge Voss, haunted by his initial ruling, invited Clara to court. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. He issued a public apology, vowing to reform Blackwater's justice system. Clara nodded, not forgiving, but acknowledging. She was free, the town changed. Sarah became sheriff, vowing fairness. Clara moved to Atlanta, starting a nonprofit to advocate for wrongfully convicted women. Her story lingered in Blackwater, a reminder that justice, though scarred, could endure. Clara stood at a podium, sunlight on her face, her voice strong. "I was broken, but I am whole again, and no one can take that." What will Clara do with her newfound freedom? And how will Blackwater heal? Chapter 7. Shadows in the Silent Sarah. Ella sat at her desk in the Blackwater Sheriff's office, the weight of her new role pressing against her shoulders. The badge on her chest felt heavier than it should, not with pride, but with responsibility. Kane's arrest had shaken the town, but it hadn't broken his hold. His allies, deputies, councilmen, even some townsfolk still whispered his name, with reverence, as if he were a martyr, not a monster. Sarah knew the fight was far from over. The office was quiet, save for the hum of a flickering fluorescent light. Papers littered her desk, witness statements, forensic reports, and a photocopy of Evelyn's journal. Its words haunted her. Sarah's fingers traced the last entry. "He's dangerous. If I die, it's him." She believed it, but belief wasn't enough. Kane's lawyer, a slick Atlanta attorney named Victor Hawley, was already spinning a narrative. That the journal was a forgery, that Clara had planted it to save herself. Sarah needed more, something undeniable. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Clara's mother, Clara Monroe. "They're harassing us again. Signs at our yard. Threats." Sarah's jaw tightened. Lena and Clara had moved to a small apartment on the edge of town while Clara recovered. But Kane's supporters hadn't let up. Last week, someone had spray-painted "murderer" on their door. Sarah typed back, "I'm on it. Stay safe." She grabbed her jacket and headed out, the night air sharp against her skin. Blackwater's streets were quiet, but the tension was palpable, like a storm waiting to break. She drove to the Monroe's apartment, her eyes scanning the shadows. Sure enough, a crude sign was staked in the yard. "Justice for Kane." Sarah ripped it out, her hands shaking with anger. She knocked on the door, and Lena answered, her face weary but fierce. "They won't stop," Lena said, her voice low. "They think Clara's the villain." Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm not letting them win. Not again." Inside, Clara sat on a worn couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Her eyes were hollow, but there was a spark of defiance that hadn't been there a week ago. Therapy was helping, but the scars physical and emotional ran deep. They hate me, Clara whispered. They always have. Not everyone, Sarah said. You've got me, you've got your mom, and there are others. We're going to prove them wrong. Clara looked up, her lips trembling. What if he gets away with it? He's done it before. Sarah knelt beside her. He won't, I promise. But promises were fragile in Blackwater. As Sarah drove back to the station, her radio crackled. Deputy Ellis, we've got a problem, said Officer Ruiz, her only ally in the department. Someone broke into Carver's old house. Looks like they were looking for something. Sarah's heart sank. Tom Carver, the retired deputy who'd confessed to seeing Kane plant the knife, had been her best lead. His suicide was too convenient, and now someone was rifling through his belongings. She turned her cruiser toward Carver's house, her mind racing. Kane was behind this, she was sure of it. Who broke into Carver's house? And what are they desperate to hide? Chapter 8. The ghost of evidence. Carver's house was a dilapidated ranch on the outskirts of town. Its windows dark, its paint peeling. Sarah parked a block away, approaching on foot to avoid attention. The front door was ajar, splintered wood marking a forced entry. She drew her flashlight and stepped inside, her boots crunching on broken glass. The place was a mess. Drawers yanked open, papers strewn across the floor, furniture overturned. Someone had been thorough but sloppy. Sarah's beam caught a glint. Under the couch, a brass key, small and old-fashioned. She pocketed it, unsure of its significance but certain it mattered. As she moved deeper into the house, she found a locked filing cabinet in Carver's study, its lock scratched as if someone had tried to pry it open. She radioed Ruiz for backup, her voice low. I need you here, but keep it quiet. No one else. Ruiz arrived minutes later, his face grim. This ain't random, he said, scanning the chaos. Kane's got friends who do this for him. Sarah nodded, her mind on the key in her pocket. Help me open this cabinet. They pried it open with a crowbar, revealing a stash of files, case reports, memos, photographs. One folder was labeled Harper Case. Inside were notes in Carver's shaky handwriting. Kane pressured me to stay quiet. Sighed he'd ruin my family. Knife wasn't Clara's. Prints planted. There was a photo, grainy but clear. Kane standing in Evelyn's kitchen, holding a knife, his face smug. Sarah's pulse quickened. This is it. Proof. But before they could secure the evidence, headlights swept across the windows. A truck screeched to a stop outside, and heavy footsteps approached. Sarah shoved the folder into her jacket and motioned for Ruiz to hide. They ducked behind a bookshelf as two men entered, their voices low but familiar. One was Deputy Carl Watts, a Kane loyalist. The other was a stranger, his voice gravelly and sharp. They didn't find it, Watts said. We gotta clean this up before Ellis snoops around. Too late, the stranger growled. She's already here, saw her cruiser. Sarah's heart pounded. She signaled Ruiz to stay quiet, her hand on her holster. The men searched the room, their footsteps heavy, their frustration growing. Sarah's mind raced. She needed to get the folder to the station, but she was trapped. Then, a crash. Ruiz had knocked over a lamp, the sound echoing. Who's there? Watts barked, drawing his gun. Sarah stepped out, her own weapon raised. Drop it, Carl. Watts froze, his eyes narrowing. The stranger bolted for the door, but Ruiz tackled him, pinning him to the ground. Sarah cuffed Watts, her voice steady. Despite her fear, You're done, Carl. Tell me who sent you. Watts spat. You're digging your own grave, Ellis. What secrets does the folder hold, and how far will Kane's allies go to protect him? Chapter 9. The Price of Truth. Sarah and Ruiz brought Watts and the stranger, identified as a local thug named Jimmy Holt, to the station. The folder was locked in the evidence room, but Sarah kept the photo on her, its weight a reminder of the high stakes. She interrogated Watts, but he stonewalled, his loyalty to Kane unshaken. Holt, however, was less resolute under pressure. He admitted Kane had paid him to clean up Carver's house, to destroy any evidence linking Kane to Evelyn's murder. Kane said it was insurance, Holt muttered. Said Carver was a loose end. Sarah's stomach twisted. Carver's death wasn't a suicide. Kane had killed him or had him killed to keep him quiet. She sent Holt to a holding cell and called Judge Voss, requesting an emergency hearing to present the new evidence. Voss agreed, but his tone was cautious. Be careful, Deputy. Kane's got more friends than you think. Back at the Monroe's apartment, Clara was struggling. Nightmares plagued her, images of Kane's face blending with the rope she'd been destined to face. Lena sat with her, reading from a worn Bible, but Clara's mind was elsewhere. She'd started writing in a journal, pouring out her pain. Her anger, her hope. I want to fight, she told Lena. For me, for Evelyn, for everyone he's hurt. Lena's eyes welled up. You're stronger than you know, baby. But strength was hard to hold onto when Blackwater's hatred pressed in. That night, a brick sailed through their window, shattering glass across the living room. A note was tied to it. Leave or die. Clara's resolve wavered, but Lena stood firm. We're not running, she said. Not anymore. Sarah arrived minutes later, her face grim. She showed Clara the photo from Carver's house. This is our chance, Clara, but it's dangerous. Kane's people are circling. Clara's hands shook as she took the photo, Kane's smug face staring back at her. He did this to me, to Evelyn, to so many, Sarah nodded. Then let's take him down together. Can Clara find the courage to face Kane again? And what will the town do when the truth comes out? Chapter 10. The town divided. The hearing was set for the next morning, but Blackwater was a powder keg. Word of Kane's arrest had spread, and the town split into factions. Kane's supporters, mostly white, older residents, gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, Free Sheriff Kane and Clara Lies. Clara's allies, led by Lena and a local activist named Mara Jones, countered with their own protest, demanding justice. The air crackled with tension. Deputies stationed between the groups to prevent violence. Sarah presented the folder and photo to Judge Voss, her voice steady despite the hostile glares from Kane's allies in the gallery. This proves Sheriff Kane framed Clara Monroe and murdered Evelyn Harper. We have witness statements, forensic inconsistencies, and now physical evidence. Victor Hawley, Kane's lawyer, was quick to counter. This so-called evidence is circumstantial at best. A grainy photo, hearsay from a dead man. My client is a respected officer, targeted by a vengeful convict. Clara sat in the back, her mother's hand gripping hers. She wanted to scream, to tell the world what Kane had done to her, but fear choked her words. She saw Kane across the room, his eyes locked on her, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He thought he'd win. He always had. But Sarah wasn't alone. Mara Jones took the stand, her voice ringing with conviction. Kane's been terrorizing this town for years. He targeted black families, Hispanic families, anyone who didn't fit his vision of Blackwater. Clara's just the latest. The gallery erupted, shouts drowning out Mara's words. Voss banged his gavel, but the chaos grew. Outside, the protests turned violent, fists flying as Kane's supporters clashed with Clara's. Sarah rushed to Clara, shielding her as they left the courthouse. We need to get you somewhere safe, she said. They drove to a safe house on the edge of town, a small cabin owned by Ruiz's family. Clara's hands shook as she sat by the window, watching the trees sway in the wind. They'll never believe me, she said. Not while he's still got power. Sarah knelt beside her. They will. We're not giving up. Will the town's division destroy the case? Or will Sarah and Clara find a way to unite Blackwater for justice? Chapter 11. The key's secret. The key Sarah found in Carver's house burned a hole in her pocket. She hadn't told anyone about it, not even Ruiz. It was small, ornate, unlike any key she'd seen in Blackwater. Late that night, while Clara slept in the safe house, Sarah sat at her giggy table, turning the key over in her hands. It had to mean something. Carver wouldn't have hidden it otherwise. She called an old friend, a locksmith named Eddie, who'd retired to Savannah. "Eddie, I need a favor," she said, describing the key. "Any idea what it opens?" Eddie's voice crackled over the phone. "Sounds like a safe deposit box key, maybe from First National. They used those old brass ones back in the day." "Check the bank in town." Sarah's heart raced. The next morning, she drove to First National Bank, the key tucked in her pocket. The manager, a nervous man named Mr. Hargrove, recognized the key immediately. "That's one of ours," he said, leading her to the vault. Box 472 belonged to Tom Carver. Inside the box was a treasure trove of audio tapes, more photos, and a letter from Carver addressed to Sarah. "If you're reading this, I'm probably dead," it began. "Kane's been running Blackwater like his personal fiefdom. The tapes are recordings of him threatening me, admitting to the Harper murder. Keep them safe." Sarah's hands trembled as she listened to the tapes in her cruiser. Kane's voice, cold and calculated, detailed how he'd killed Evelyn over a land deal she'd refused to sign over. He'd framed Clara because she was easy prey, young, alone, and defenseless. The tapes were damning, but Sarah knew getting them admitted in court would be a fight. Kane's allies would claim they were doctored. She drove back to the safe house, where Clara was writing in her journal. "Clara," Sarah said, holding up the tapes, "this is our weapon." Clara's eyes widened. "He admitted it?" Sarah nodded. "We're going to bury him." But as they planned their next move, a shadow moved outside the cabin. Someone was watching. Who's stalking the safe house? And will the tape survive long enough to reach the courtroom? Chapter 12. The ambush. Sarah's instincts kicked in. She grabbed her gun and motioned for Clara to hide. The shadow outside moved closer, a silhouette against the moonlight. Sarah crept to the window, her heart pounding. The figure was tall, broad-shouldered, and familiar. Deputy Watts, out on bail and clearly not done with Kane's bidding. Sarah whispered to Clara, "Stay low. Call Ruiz." Clara nodded, her hands shaking as she dialed. Sarah stepped outside, her gun raised. "Watts, stop right there." Watts froze, his hands up, but his eyes defiant. "You're making a mistake, Ellis. You don't know who you're up against." "I know exactly who," Sarah snapped. "Kane's done, and so are you." Watts lunged, faster than Sarah expected, knocking the gun from her hand. They grappled in the dirt, his strength overwhelming. Clara, watching from the window, screamed, breaking Watts's focus. Sarah seized the moment, slamming her elbow into his jaw and pinning him down. Ruiz arrived just in time, cuffing Watts and dragging him to the cruiser. But the danger wasn't over. Watts hadn't come alone. A second figure emerged from the trees, a man Sarah recognized as Kane's cousin, Ray Tanner, a known enforcer. Ray fired a shot, grazing Sarah's arm. She dove behind the cruiser, returning fire as Ruiz shielded Clara inside. The firefight was brief, but brutal. Ray fled into the woods, wounded but alive. Sarah's arm bled, but she refused to stop. She handed the tapes to Ruiz. "Get these to Voss now." Ruiz hesitated. "You're hurt. I live," Sarah said. "Go." Clara emerged, her face pale but resolute. "I'm coming with you." Sarah shook her head. "It's too dangerous." "I'm done hiding," Clara said, her voice firm. "This is my fight, too." Can Sarah and Clara protect the tapes and survive Kane's relentless all-eyes? Chapter 13. The fire of resistance. Sarah and Clara drove to the courthouse, the tapes locked in a safe in the cruiser's trunk. The town was a war zone. Protests had escalated, with fires burning in the streets. Kane's supporters had torched a community center run by Mara Jones, a message to Clara's allies. Sirens wailed, and Sarah's radio crackled with reports of chaos. At the courthouse, Judge Vos was waiting, his face grim. "This better be worth it, Ellis," he said, taking the tapes. "The town's tearing itself apart." Sarah handed over the evidence, her arm bandaged but her resolve unbroken. "Play them. Let the truth speak." Vos listened to the tapes in his chambers, his expression darkening with each word. "This changes everything," he said. "But Holly will fight tooth and nail to keep these out." Clara, standing beside Sarah, spoke for the first time. "Then let me testify. Let me tell them what he did." Vos studied her, seeing the strength beneath her pain. "You're sure?" Clara nodded. "I'm ready." The hearing resumed the next day, the courtroom packed. Clara took the stand, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. She recounted Kane's obsession, his threats, the night he'd stolen her dignity. She didn't cry, she refused to give him that power. The gallery was silent, her words a weight they couldn't ignore. Holly tried to discredit her, painting her as unstable, but the tapes were played. Kane's voice filled the room, admitting to murder, to framing Clara, to years of corruption. Gasps echoed, and even Kane's supporters faltered. Vos banged his gavel, ordering a recess to review the evidence. Outside, Lena and Mara led a rally, their voices rising above the chaos. "Justice for Clara!" They chanted, their numbers growing. Blackwater was waking up, and Kane's grip was slipping. Will the tapes be enough to convict Kane, or will his lawyer find a way to twist the truth? Chapter 14. The betrayal within. As the trial loomed, Sarah uncovered a new threat. Someone in the sheriff's department was leaking information to Holly. Case files went missing. Witnesses were intimidated, and Sarah's own notes were tampered with. She suspected Deputy Greg Larson, a quiet man who'd always been loyal to Kane. She set a trap, planting a fake report about a new witness. Sure enough, Holly referenced it in court, confirming Larson's betrayal. Sarah confronted Larson in the station's break room, her voice low but fierce. "Why, Greg? Why protect a monster?" Larson's eyes darted away. "You don't get it, Sarah. Kane's got dirt on everyone. If he goes down, we all do." "Then you're going down with him," Sarah said, cuffing him. She turned him over to internal affairs, but the damage was done. Holly had enough to challenge the tape's authenticity, claiming they'd been edited. Clara, meanwhile, was finding her voice. She met with Mara, who introduced her to a network of survivors women Kane had targeted over the years. Their stories were chilling, a pattern of abuse hidden by Blackwater's silence. Clara's journal became a weapon, her words a call to action. She shared excerpts with Mara, who published them online, sparking a national outcry. Justice for Clara trended, and reporters descended on Blackwater. But Kane wasn't finished. From his cell, he sent a message through Ray Tanner, who evaded capture. A package arrived at the safe house, a photo of Clara, taken through a window. With a note, "You can't hide." How will Clara face the growing threats? And can Sarah stop the leaks before the trial collapses? Chapter 15. The breaking point. Clara's nightmares worsened, Kane's face haunting her every night. She woke screaming, Lena holding her as she sobbed. But each morning, she forced herself to write, to fight, to live. Mara's network gave her strength, their stories a mirror of her own pain. She wasn't alone anymore. Sarah, meanwhile, was unraveling. The leaks, the violence, the pressure of the trial, it was too much. She hadn't slept in days, her arm still aching from the gunshot. Ruiz found her in the evidence room, staring at the tapes. "You need a break." "Sarah," he said. "I can't," she replied. "If I stop, he wins." Ruiz placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone, either." Together, they devised a plan to trap Ray Tanner. Sarah leaked a fake meeting time for a new witness, knowing Ray would take the bait. Sure enough, He showed up at an abandoned warehouse where Sarah and Ruiz were waiting. A tense standoff ended with Ray in cuffs, but not before he revealed a bombshell. Kane had a second set of tapes, hidden somewhere in Blackwater, that could expose other corrupt officials. Sarah's mind raced. If those tapes existed, they could either destroy Kane's remaining allies or give him leverage to walk free. She needed to find them first. Clara, learning of the new tapes, insisted on helping. "He took everything from me," she said. "I want to take something from him." Sarah hesitated but saw the fire in Clara's eyes. "Okay, but we do this my way. Where are Kane's hidden tapes? And what secrets do they hold?" Chapter 16. The hunt for truth. Sarah and Clara searched Kane's old office, now sealed off pending the investigation. The key from Carver's house didn't fit any locks there. But Clara noticed a loose floorboard under Kane's desk. Beneath it was a small safe, its lock matching the key. Inside were the tapes, dozens of them, labeled with names of Blackwater's elite councilmen, judges, even a state senator. Sarah played one, her blood running cold. It was Kane blackmailing a councilman into approving a land deal. Another tape implicated Judge Voss's predecessor in a bribery scheme. The tapes were a map of Blackwater's corruption, with Kane at its center, but the safe also held something else. A letter from Kane to Clara, written before his arrest. "You were always mine," it read. "No one will believe you." Clara's hands shook as she read it, but she didn't cry. She handed it to Sarah. "Use this. Show them who he is." Sarah took the letter and tapes to Voss, who was shaken but resolute. "This ends now," he said. "We're reopening every case Kane touched." The trial resumed, and the new tapes were admitted. Hale's objections faltered as the evidence piled up. Clara testified again, reading Kane's letter aloud. The courtroom was silent, her pain and strength undeniable. Kane's face, once smug, was ashen. Will the new tapes dismantle Blackwater's corruption, or will Kane's allies strike back? Chapter 17. The Reckoning. To trial's final days were a storm. Kane's allies tried to discredit the tapes, but the sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses came forward, former victims, silenced for years, now emboldened by Clara's courage. A black woman named Tanya Reed testified about Kane's harassment, her voice breaking but resolute. A Hispanic shopkeeper, Miguel Torres, recounted how Kane had extorted him. The courtroom became a confessional, Blackwater's sins laid bare. Kane took the stand, his charm faltering. He denied everything, but his lies crumbled under cross-examination. Sarah watched from the gallery, her arms still bandaged, her heart heavy but hopeful. Clara sat beside her, clutching her journal like a lifeline. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: murder, rape, obstruction of justice, extortion. Kane was sentenced to life without parole. The gallery erupted, some in cheers, others in outrage. Clara didn't move, her eyes fixed on Kane as he was led away, his power gone. Outside, Lena and Mara embraced Clara, tears streaming. Sarah joined them, her badge gleaming in the sunlight. "We did it," she said. Clara nodded, her voice soft. "It's not over, not yet." What will Clara do with her newfound freedom, and how will Blackwater heal? Chapter 18. The aftermath. Blackwater was a town in mourning, not for Kane, but for its innocence. The tapes exposed a network of corruption, leading to arrests of councilmen, deputies, and even a judge. Sarah, now interim sheriff, worked tirelessly to rebuild the department, hiring diverse officers and implementing reforms, but the scars ran deep, and trust was hard to restore. Clara moved to Atlanta with Lena, starting therapy and her nonprofit, Light from Shadows, to support wrongfully convicted women. She spoke at rallies, her journal entries becoming a book that inspired thousands. Her story was a beacon, proof that justice could prevail, but the threats didn't stop. Kane's supporters sent hate mail, and Clara's nonprofit office was vandalized. She refused to back down, her resolve forged in pain. "They can't silence me," she told Lena. "Not anymore." Sarah visited Clara in Atlanta, bringing news of Blackwater's changes. "We're naming a community center after Evelyn," she said, "and I'm pushing for a review of all wrongful convictions." Clara smiled, a rare lightness in her eyes. "You're a good cop, Sarah." "And you're a hell of a fighter," Sarah replied. Can Clara's work change the system, or will the shadows of Blackwater follow her? Chapter 19. The national stage. Clara's book, Shadows of Justice, hit shelves and soared to bestseller lists. She was invited to speak on national news, her story resonating across the U.S. She met with lawmakers, advocating for reforms to prevent wrongful convictions and protect survivors of abuse. Her voice, once silenced, was now a force. In Blackwater, Sarah faced resistance but pushed forward. She uncovered more of Kane's crimes, including a cold case linked to a missing black teenager. The town began to heal slowly as new leaders emerged. Mara, Ruiz, and others who believed in justice. Clara returned to Blackwater for the community center's opening, standing beside Sarah as they unveiled a plaque for Evelyn. The crowd was diverse, a sign of change. Clara spoke, her voice strong. "This is for everyone who's been silenced. We're louder now." Will Clara's legacy endure? And can Blackwater become a beacon of justice? Chapter 20. The final word. Years later, Clara stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing a crowd of activists. Her nonprofit had grown, saving dozens of women from wrongful convictions. Blackwater was a different town, its sheriff's department, a model for reform under Sarah's leadership. Clara looked out at the crowd, her heart full. "I was broken," she said, "but I am whole again, and no one can take that." The applause was deafening, a testament to her strength, to justice's triumph. In Blackwater, a new generation grew up hearing Clara's story, a reminder that even in the darkest shadows, light could emerge. Clara's journey was over, but her fight was just beginning. What will she conquer next? If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something we should never forget, please like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and follow our journey for more stories that honor truth, dignity, and the power of standing tall, even when the world looks away. Because when we remember together, we rise together. And that, at any age, is how change begins.